Graffiti in the late 90s was absolutely central to my existence. However, despite how important graph was to me, in the fall of 1998, I ended up walking away from the scene. However, I've been back in the scene now, and I've spotted many changes that have taken place from my time in the 90s up until now. And I'm going to release a series of videos about all these different changes that I've seen, but in this first video, we're going to talk about markers and materials. When it comes to the markers and materials that were available to me in the 90s, one word sums up everything very well. And that word is scarcity. And some of this scarcity had to do with circumstance. Pretty much everybody that I tagged with and myself were all underage, so we couldn't really go anywhere except for one place to go buy stuff. As I've talked about previously, racking was very difficult, and even what was available and what was out there was incredibly limited. And during those times when it came to spray paint, I only remember two brands, Krylon and Rust-Oleum. And I'm sure other people were using other things, and there were definitely other brands out there, but if I ever held a can of paint in my hands in the 90s, it was one of those two brands. In terms of the colors that were available to you, I only saw just the most basic things. I didn't see anything too cool. I didn't see any neon colors or anything too bold. It was black, it was white, it was red, and it was yellow. And when it came to the markers that were out there, they were in a similar boat. I really only ever saw single models of things in multiple colors. So this means when it comes to pilots, I only ever really saw pilot jumbos. For SGs, it was SG7s. There was only one type of Ultra, there was only one type of Mini. And similar to spray paint, when it came to the ink that you could get for these markers, there weren't really too many things available. People had other things available to them in other places, and even some people in San Francisco had more advanced ink going on in their markers. But for us, it was mostly pilot ink in red, black, blue, and green. And this scarcity of materials absolutely influenced how people acted and how people treated each other. One of these natural side effects was racking, people going out and trying to come up on these things because they couldn't get them otherwise. But people being scandalous with each other, in particular snaking each other and robbing each other, was also a side effect of this scarcity. But this scarcity didn't only have negative effects on us, it also drove innovation. And if we were making our own markers and making our own ink, it was out of scarcity, it was out of necessity, and for some people, it was just out of respect for the culture of graph. And if this scarcity of supplies wasn't bad enough, there was also a stigma against using other things as well. And with the exception of a regular pen, possibly the easiest thing that you could get in the 90s that had some ink in it was a Sharpie marker. And if you pulled out a Sharpie on a bus, people would laugh at you. And using a Sharpie on a bus or on a wall was damn near akin to using a crayon or using a pencil. That's not to say that we didn't use them as well, and we used a lot of other things that were very easy to get. And some of these things include shoe polish applicators and pilot ink, which I could just go over to Walgreens and cop whenever I wanted. And when I would use a Sharpie marker, I would use it on postage labels, which were also very easy to get as well. And for the remainder of my time as an active writer, it pretty much stayed this way, and scarcity was very normal. But after I got back into the scene a couple years ago, did I find this to still be the case? And to put it simply, absolutely not. And the situation in 2025 is damn near the polar opposite of what it was in the late 90s. In 2025, as long as you're willing to pay a little bit more for shipping, there isn't anything that you can't get in a couple of days. And there really isn't anything throughout the entire world that you can't get, period. There's a graffiti company called Dux Markers that's based out of the Ukraine. These markers are advertised as being able to be used on any surface, and I've seen them used mostly on concrete and other rough surfaces in videos. But in the 90s, unless you lived in the Ukraine or you knew somebody that lived in the same place in the Ukraine as this person, you would never even know that these markers exist. And these markers on the market are absolutely endless. Graffiti supplies are readily available from major retailers like Amazon and Michaels, but there's also a ton of companies out there owned by people from the graffiti world itself. And if you want something in a particular size, a particular color, if you want to use two markers at once, if you want to use a special adapter on a spray can, you can have all these things in your hands in no time at all. But when I think about what's out there, especially when it comes to markers, I can say with no disrespect to the companies involved, that many of these companies are selling the exact same marker with a different label on it. And in the 90s, it wasn't really like this. An SG looked like a SG, a Pilot looked like a Pilot, and an Ultra looked like an Ultra, and there was absolutely no confusing any of them. And these markers were so unique but so ubiquitous, and I used them in particular so many different times that I could look at a tag from that time and tell you what kind of marker was used in the tag. But with these markers being more accessible and more available, something else from the 90s has been lost as well. And that's that feeling of satisfaction that you would get when you cop a new marker. As I've talked about previously, in the late 90s, there was only one spot that I could ever really go to and expect to be able to cop something. And because this place was out in Daly City and we could only go during the week, we would have to plan our trips out there. We'd have to plan to cut school a few days in advance. And we'd have all that anticipation. We'd have a lot of excitement. We really just couldn't wait to go out to Doug's spot and go get something. And as soon as you had a new marker, especially an SG or an Ultra, and that thing was inked up and you were ready to rock, you couldn't contain yourself. You're damn near running out of the house to be able to go hit something up. Moments like this were damn near like opening up a gift on Christmas. And while it's still pretty cool for a package to drop to your mailbox and you get a couple of new markers, it's definitely not the same as the 90s. And that feeling in the 90s was damn near one of the best things about being a tagger, period. But when I think about the better things about being involved in the scene now, I have to say availability is central to this. But it's not the availability of markers or materials, it's the availability of information. And if you want to learn how to make your own ink, if you want to learn how to use a fire extinguisher to do tags with, nothing is stopping you. And if you see a tutorial that doesn't really vibe with you or doesn't really explain the issue all that well, you can see another one, you can see another one, you could see a million tutorials in a day if you choose to do so. And in the 90s, the only way you were going to learn stuff was physically sitting down with somebody and having them teach you. And if you didn't know people that knew these things, or if the people that you knew gate-kept information like a lot of people did in the 90s, you were going to be left in the dark, and there's things that you could be doing, you could be exploring, and it wasn't going to happen because you didn't know any better. But now there's equal access to information for everybody, and if there's anything that you want to pursue, you can find out how to do it in real time and go out and do it, possibly in the same day. And ultimately, in 2025, if you like collecting like I do, and even more so if you like information like I do, it's an absolutely beautiful time to be in the scene.